Caro-Kann Defense.
e4, c6.
Similarly to the French defense, black paves the way for the move d5, but as distinct from the French defense in some Caro-Kann variations, black can develop the c8 bishop without shutting it off by the move e6. The pawn advance to c5, which black quite frequently has to carry out, is executed here in two moves. 1. Advance variation 3, e5.
d4, d5, e5, bishop f5, bishop d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, e6.
If
Knight f3,
black can carry out a maneuver recommended by Nimzowitsch.
queen a5, check, c3, queen a6,
leading to the queen's exchange since the white queen's retreat holds up white's castling.
knight e2, queen b6, knight b c3, c5.
Black has excellent counterplay in the center.
e4, c6, d4, d5, e takes d5, c takes d5,
2. Pan of attack.
c4, d takes c4, bishop takes c4.
Transposes to the queen's gambit accepted.
Knight f6, knight c3,
Weaker is
knight c6, bishop g5,
and if.
d takes c4,
Then comes
d5, knight e5, queen d4, knight d3, check, bishop takes d3, c takes d3, long castle.
and white has a big advantage in development. Botvinnik, Flower Match, 1934.
e6, knight f3, bishop e7, c5, short castle, b4.
White has some advantage on the Q side. In the Botvinnik, Golombek game Alekhine Memorial Tournament, 1956 there followed
b6, bishop d3,
better is
a5, knight a4, knight f d7, bishop d7, bishop e3, knight g4, short castle, a5, knight a4,
with a clear advantage for white.
e4, c6, d4, d5, knight c3, d takes e4, knight takes e4.
3. Main variation. It is possible to play
Knight d7,
preparing for 5, coup to f6, c tall, fuster.
bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6, knight f3, knight d7, h4, h6, h5.
A modern interpretation of this variation, white clamps the opponent's K side.
Bishop h7, bishop d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, queen c7.
Black prepares for castling queenside, at the same time preventing white from developing the bishop on f4.
Bishop d2, long castle, knight g f6, queen e2.
White improves their position by establishing the knight outpost on e5.
e6, knight e5,
After
knight b6, Bishop a5.
White's play is also considerably freer.
Knight takes e5. D takes e5. Knight d7. f4. Bishop e7. Knight e4. Knight c5.
That is how Game 13 in the Spassky, Petrosian World Title match in 1966 continued. White's play is freer.
e4. c6.
4. Variation 2. Coup de f3.
Knight f3. d5. Knight c3.
After.
D takes e4. Knight takes e4. Bishop f5. Knight g3. Bishop g6. h4. h6. Knight e5. Bishop h7. Queen h5. d4. Knight e2. c5.
Is weaker due to.
c3.
And if.
Knight c6.
Then.
C takes d4. C takes d4. Queen a4.
Winning a pawn.
Bishop g4.
By this sequence of moves White prevents the Gauge f5 maneuver.
h3. Bishop takes f3. Queen takes f3. e6. d4. Knight f6. Bishop d3. D takes e4. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4.
It is dangerous to accept the sacrifice of the d4 pawn since black lags in development.
Queen takes e4. Knight d7.
White has a slight advantage in the center. Tall, Fuster, Porteros, 1958.
e4. c6. d4. d5. Knight c3. D takes e4. Knight takes e4. Knight d7. Knight f3. Knight g f6. Knight takes f6. Check. Knight takes f6. Bishop c4. Bishop g4.
Would be a mistake because of.
Bishop takes f7. Check. King takes f7. Knight e5. Check. Bishop f5. Queen e2.
White is preparing to castle long.
e6. Bishop g5. Bishop g4.
Is stronger. This subtle play by Petrosian in a game against Fischer Bled, 1961, forestalls many latent hazards.
Bishop e7. Long castle. h6. Bishop h4. Knight e4.
A questionable move. Black keeps the king in the center in order to simplify position with an exchange of bishops.
g4. Bishop takes g4.
Is bad because of.
Bishop takes e7. Bishop takes f3. Queen takes f3.
As well as.
Bishop takes h4.
Is bad because of.
G takes f5. E takes f5. Knight takes h4. Queen takes h4. f3.
In both cases White wins a piece.
Bishop h7. Bishop g3. Knight takes g3.
According to the rules, white should play.
H takes g3.
But every rule has its exceptions. This move permits white to use the f-file for his major pieces.
F takes g3. Queen c7. Knight e5. Bishop d6. h4.
In the case of
Long castle.
wins,
Knight takes f7.
and if,
Short castle.
then,
g5.
immediately destroys the black king's pawn cover.
f6.
Black counts on castling long after the knight's retreat.
Bishop takes e6.
Familiar tactics. If the opposing king is in the center, then it is necessary to open the files immediately.
F takes e5. D takes e5.
No better is.
Bishop takes e5. Rook h e1. Bishop e7. Rook h f1.
With the threat of 20. Gaja f7 Sekik Raja f8 21. Gaja g6 Sekik Raja g8 22. Mentary c4 mat.
Rook f8. Rook takes f8. Check. Bishop takes f8. Queen f3.
Forbidding black to put into play the rook. 21. Bentang d8. 22. Bentang Pukul d8 Sekik winning.
Queen e7. Queen b3.
With a new threat. 23. Gaja d7 Sekik Mentary Pukul d7 24. Bentang Pukul d7 Raja Pukul d7 25. Mentary Pukul b7 Sekik.
Rook b8. Bishop d7. Check. Queen takes d7. Rook takes d7. King takes d7. Queen f7. Check. Bishop e7. e6. Check.
Or.
King d6. Queen f4. Check.
Winning the rook.
King d8. Queen takes g7.
Black resigned. The black h7 bishop is doomed.